Happy holidays from Digication Scholars Conversations. I'm your host, Jeff Yan. Over the next 2 weeks, we will be sharing 2 special episodes featuring former students of Laurie Pierce from DePaul University. If you haven't heard our conversation with Professor Pierce, please listen to episodes 7 and 8 of the podcast. Our conversation today is with Michaela Clarke, a graduate of DePaul University who is now a fellow at the Equal Justice Initiative. More links and information about today's conversation can be found on Digication's Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Full episodes of the Digication Scholars Conversations can be found on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. Welcome to Digication Scholars Conversations. Today I have Michaela Clarke from DePaul University. Actually, she's no longer at DePaul University. She proudly graduated in 2019 with a BA in African and Black Diaspora Studies and Peace, Justice, and Conflict Studies from DePaul University. At DePaul, as an undergraduate, she already were facilitating restorative justice workshops and participated in the Inside Out Prison Exchange Program with men incarcerated at the Stateville Prison. Since graduating, she had joined the Equal Justice Initiative, which is an amazing organization in Alabama, and she's there as a Justice Fellow. I am so glad to have you here with us today, Michaela.
Thanks so much for having me, Jeff. I am so excited to speak with you again. And yeah, it's been a little bit since I've been at DePaul, but definitely excited to talk about the work and just anything else. So thank you for having me.
You graduated now over a year. I mean, you spread your wings and you flew pretty far south.
That's right, all the way south.
So I must say that maybe, you know what we should do? We should tell the audience a little bit about how I met you. I was your portfolio at DePaul popped up in my radar, and I think it was through some searches that I was doing, and I just came across your portfolio, and I thought, wow, this is really good content, because I was looking at the time at some sort of Black Lives Matter, just looking up some information, and actually especially about arts in racial justice, and your portfolio came up, and I started looking into your portfolio and seeing some like images of arts in the urban Chicago area that no longer exist in the world. They've been taken down, but through your portfolio, I got to learn about them and view them. I'm sure it's not the same as being in person, but it was still a really amazing piece of history. And so from there, I actually ended up looking through your portfolio, and it was just really amazing. I had no idea who you were, and I didn't even know. I thought you were a student. I didn't know you were graduated already, but I decided to contact you and just say, "Hey, thanks for putting this up." And then we ended up connecting on Zoom and started talking, and that's how we got to know each other.
Yeah. And I was so shocked to receive your email. I was like, what? The CEO of Digication is looking at my capstone? I was like, what? This is just very strange. I wasn't sure how to respond, but I thought it would be a cool opportunity, especially because you were just reaching out and wanted to learn more. And this project was something that I definitely was proud of. Before I graduated, it was a wonderful way to end my time in the African and Black Diaspora Studies program, as well as just as an undergraduate student in general. And so there are definitely some edits that should be done to that project. It was quite a bit ago, and I even looking back at it, I'm like, oh, I could have done this a little bit differently. But yeah, I was just very interested in investigating how public art and public spaces contribute to community organizing and how they kind of set a foundation for what we see today. And even though some of these public art spaces are no longer around, I still very much believe in the power of storytelling through art, and how a community's identity can be preserved through public institutions and the people that are there and who have been there, and who are moving into more abstract organizing spaces.
Yeah, that's definitely very fascinating to me. As I think shared with you, my background is I went to an art and design school, and when all of the recent civil unrest events had happened, one of the things that I started looking into was into the arts, because that's a place where I find comfort and find a lot of different ways to relate to that are that can help me emotionally, and seeing that part of it being documented in your portfolio was really really quite helpful. And it also speaks to how many different aspects of um, racial justice and different areas that you can study, and how many ways that we're impacted,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely. And even to learn that little piece about your background was um, surprising and unique to me, because I, to be honest, have not seen many CEOs of large corporations take an interest in this artistic space and have a real like personal invested interest in how art plays into this racial justice moment. So I that was definitely something that stuck out to me in our last conversation, and definitely a piece I enjoyed and appreciated hearing from you.
Well, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about this undergraduate experience that you had at DePaul, because I spoke with Lori, your professor, your capstone course professor. Um, she's really just inspiring to my core, and I I want to get your take on what that experience was like. Maybe tell us a little bit about how does that major work, and how do you get to the point where you can do a capstone, and what is a capstone project?
Yeah, so the capstone project is typically for students graduating with a major or minor in African and Black diaspora studies. So it's usually done towards the end of your coursework, to kind of just capitalize off of everything that you've learned and just wrap everything up. And so that's kind of the intention I went into this course with. And honestly, I was thinking that I had no idea what my topic would be when I first entered um, this course in my last quarter at DePaul University. And we are on the quarter system, so it's 10 weeks. It's pretty quick, and we probably get less time than most other students to complete like a capstone project. And so I went into this thinking that we are just going to be writing a really long paper, and that we were going to spend the quarter researching and developing a written paper. And the first day of class, Dr. Pierce was like, I think we're going to try something different, because I think in the past they have done papers. I don't think before our class we were ever using the Digication platform. And I hadn't used Digication since my freshman year in our writing class that everyone had to take. That was my last experience with Digication. And so I was a little bit anxious about what that might mean for a project that essentially would be summarizing my major in African and Black diaspora studies and just seeing it as a closing of that period. But throughout the class, we were learning along with Dr. Pierce, like everything that Digication can do. But I think in particular for my topic, it was really important for me to include imagery and imagery in the form of poems and songs and pictures of these murals that existed, and having that visual aspect and that the space to create something that viewers can experience as well as read about was something that it definitely took this capstone project to a whole other level. And that is one of the reasons why I am so proud of it, because I mean, you can definitely take the text off the web page and put it into a paper and make it cohesive and to be read, but you lose that experience element. And that was something that I really wanted to convey. I wanted to place people in a different time period in conversation with these artists that were gathering together in like the 50s and 60s and up until this current moment today. But also by the end of my capstone, I don't necessarily make a definitive statement, because I believe that community organizing is changing, and organizing for Black liberation is something that evolves depending on the moment. And so I don't think the work is done. I don't think we're at a point where we are in a liberated society. And I think the methods for how folks engage with this conversation will change over time. And there is absolutely a place for the arts. And I think it's something that we all have to kind of experience together. So that was a little bit about the class. And we had lots of workshopping sessions where we talked about our overall experiences in ABD and what we see could be improvements in the overall coursework. And then by the end, we presented our capstones to the rest of the class, and the department chair and other professor in the department. So it was a really cool experience.
What was that like when you saw your classmates? They all did different things. In your case, you were talking about using, arts and public arts in community spaces and doing community organizing, specifically in Chicago South Side, right?
Right.
Other people did other things completely different from yours.
Mm-hmm.
How did that feel as a classmate of someone else doing these other drastically different projects in the same class?
I think that's what one of the most beautiful things about ABD is, that there are, because the diaspora is so immense and vast, like there are Black people of all different specialties and professions all across the world. And I think being able to be in a classroom where there are different interests that people have, and the fact that we're able to teach each other about our specialty, that was really cool. And we were able to give feedback throughout the course in these workshopping sessions. It was a pretty small class, so we got to know each other's projects pretty well. And I just think that's one of the beautiful things about the program in general, that you do have people coming from all different backgrounds. And in my case, since I was a double major with peace, justice, and conflict studies, I definitely wanted to merge the two. I felt like that was a match that made sense to me, and it was definitely a struggle getting other faculty members, not just in African and Black diaspora studies, but in peace, justice, and conflict studies, to see how the two fit together. And so similarly, I think other students were coming from different backgrounds. You mentioned Jack and his political science background, and so he brought politics into his ABD capstone. And my other friend, she comes from a film background, so she was able to incorporate film studies into her project. So I definitely think there is so much room for other interests in this work.
What I think is so beautiful is that there is an education model, a classroom, um, that a structure of that classroom that is not taken advantage of by many classes, and that is to allow for students to have the freedom and to trust the students, to believe in the students, to be able to go in and research on topics and bring, like you said, bring together your background, your interest, your passion, your knowledge, and your life experience, um, and it's through that kind of sort of intense research and feedback and sort of collaboration, but yet you're working on these, these different topics, and but yet you get to learn from each other in, I feel like, in pretty personal ways. So I would argue, and by the way, this is very much part of my own learning experience as well. I was in an art and design school. I studied architecture. We had a similar type of thing where there just isn't an easy way to just say, here are the 15 things you need to learn to be an architect. There were just an infinite amount of possibilities, and so we gave up on let's learn the 15 things. Instead, we just picked the few things that each person was really interested in, and you can almost always have a very unique point of view because there are too many things to pick from. But you go really deep, each of you, and then as a group, what I think is really fascinating is that you get to almost learn, maybe not to the extent that someone else did when they were doing the research, but you learn quite a bit about their perspectives too throughout the
Right.
semester. And I would say that sort of the net knowledge gained is better, higher, more in depth, more passionate than if you had taken everyone's topic. Like you said, you talked about your topic, your friends talked about film, and Jack talked about politics. And if you were to somehow, if Laurie, as a professor, put together some kind of, multiple texts for you to read and just sort of teach a regular class, I just don't feel like that you would go nearly as far. So I think that net result, you've all gained more by doing it this way.
Right, right. And I definitely hear you too when you say that we kind of had to go and create the reading that we wanted to use, or like go and seek that out on our own versus having Dr. Pierce hand us a bunch of readings. And she definitely did give us things to read and like think about as we're going through our topics. But yeah, I definitely appreciated that independent aspect of being able to um, take our passions and research and put these tangible elements with it. Um, and I do think I'm a better researcher for it. And I think I'm able to articulate uh, what I'm passionate about in academia better because of that class.
Mhm. Now, speaking of that, now tell us what happened after you graduated. I mean, you've got the coolest job that I anyone I know have um, in the world. So tell us about that. I mean, you by the way have had some amazing people in your life. I feel like Dr. Laurie Pierce is one of them. Um, but now you have EJI. Um, Tell us about the Equal Justice Initiative and how you got there.
Yeah, so the Equal Justice Initiative is a human rights legal organization in Montgomery, Alabama, started by Director Brian Stevenson. And We've since expanded. This is an organization that's been around for 30 years as a law office working on cases related to the death penalty specifically and other prison condition issues. Um, and we've since expanded into this racial justice space because we noticed in the criminal justice system that clients are affected by race and class. And that's something that just cannot be ignored any longer. And it's rooted in this history of racial injustice. So, 2 years ago, EJI opened the Legacy Museum from Enslavement to Mass Incarceration and the National Memorial for Peace and Justice. And these are two cultural sites. People come from all over to experience the work and the research that we have here. And Montgomery is such a unique city as well. It's the birthplace of the civil rights movement, but also the cradle of the Confederacy. Um, that's language taken from the Alabama State Seal. But yeah, and so this city is so unique in that it has a very real history of enslavement as well. And it was a major player in the domestic slave trade. And so we track that history from then until this era that we named the era of racial terror lynching, which is what the memorial is based off of, where we document over 4,000 victims of racial terror violence, Black people who were lynched across the United States from 1877 to 1950. And then we, in our museum, we track that history to this resistance to the civil rights movement and how that ideology that was created from enslavement and from the genocide of Native peoples that were here, this ideology of white supremacy did not just go away with the passage of legislation. And then we bring that to this current moment of mass incarceration of Black and people of color. And so as a justice fellow, I've been working on the racial justice team, specifically with the Community Remembrance Project. And we do lots of research for individual victims and also these massacres that happened during this period of 1877 to 1950. And we work alongside communities to share the history of their own communities. And we don't believe that we can get to a place of healing and reconciliation without first telling the truth about what happened and uncovering that and naming how this history has impacted entire communities and families and individuals. So I committed to this 2-year fellowship. It's lots of researching. I was very interested in EJI as an undergraduate student when I had the opportunity to visit Montgomery before the sites opened. So I already had my heart set on returning when I had the opportunity to visit as a DePaul student. And so after graduating, I applied for this fellowship that I saw, and it was a very quick turnaround. I sent in the application. Next month, I was called down for an in-person interview, and then the next month, I got a job offer, and they was like, "Oh yeah, can you start in January in a couple weeks?" So it's very quick, but I do believe in the timing of things, and it really came at the perfect time, and it was something that I had my heart set on for years before coming here. So,
Well, I'm sure that it wasn't as simple as you made it out to be. Michaela, you clearly are brilliant, um, and I don't know whether having done your capstone project has helped you at all, but it feels like that the type of approach, the type of research that you're able to put together in order to complete a capstone project um, must have come through just in the way that you tackle projects. Like you said, you're a better researcher from having done it.
absolutely.
So I'm sure that that itself is worth something. And I was going to also say that um, it this is really a wonderful outcome that you're able to work at such a prestigious and important and great job. And it's you're like a real living proof of the importance of liberal arts education and and the ability to think and research and to ask questions. These are such important skills so that sometimes uh, higher education get a get beaten up by by the media, saying that, hey, why should someone be paying so much money and getting in so much debt into this? And I'm not, by the way, necessarily arguing that higher education isn't expensive, but I am arguing for that, for the fact that we still need higher education. It shouldn't be thought of as, hey, why don't someone just go to some boot camp and just learn a trade and be done? And I just think that higher education still holds a very important part of what our society needs. For a large number of people, that could be there. That's really a really realizable path for them.
Yeah, and I think you're definitely speaking to the need for spaces where we're able to think through these complicated subjects and really just talk things out with each other, and reimagine what the future could look like. And I definitely am grateful for my experience in higher education, even though, I am in debt because of it. But I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to um, dig into a passion that I didn't necessarily think was there. And it definitely gave me the opportunity to learn from peers and be able to put language and research and words to a better future, like where we can go from here. Um, because I do believe that something better is waiting for us in the future. We just have to create it, and we have to be willing to work with each other to create that future.
So last time you and I talked, it was pre-election. It is now post-election. Um, and today, in fact, is November 16th, and I don't know when this episode is going to come out, but I am uh, I went to the EJI website, and I actually just discovered this today. I didn't see this from before. I don't know why. But there is something called a history of racial injustice in the website, and it's so cool. Um, I signed up for it, and I suppose I will be getting daily emails from
Yes,
your
you
calendar
would.
entries. And can I share a little bit of what we have today? So
Absolutely.
today, on November 16th, 1900, this is 120 years ago. Um, a teenager who's only 16 years old, a black teenager, um, Preston John Porter Jr., was burned alive while chained to a um, railroad stake in Colorado. And this is with 300 white people from throughout the county gathered in participation in this public spectacle lynching. Um, so this is this is the type of research that you were talking about, and I mean, reading this, I think should be sufficient to make anyone who has any kind of, who has a heart to have it sink, and but like you said, if we don't understand history, we won't ever be able to tell what the truth is, and we won't be able to act and improve from there and grow. And
And
so, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I just wanted to say on that that event for today, that community in Colorado actually erected a historical marker this past weekend to memorialize Mr. Porter, and we are part of these projects erecting historical markers to build this narrative into the physical landscape to create some permanence that when people can go and visit communities, they see this history as well. It's a permanent confrontation with truth in a way. Thank you for raising that story on this platform, and um, being willing to sign up to learn more through our calendar.
No, absolutely. I look forward to getting all of this into my inbox and getting, like you said, knowing the knowledge, having the information, um, gives us power, gives us strength, and so much of this can get forgotten otherwise because it's just one person, it's just one boy, right? And it's so easy to have this just have forgotten about it, and so easy to have not recognized it. And based on your work and EJI's work, we now get a chance to be more informed, and this is just so important and so beautiful that you're doing this. Thank you so much. Uh, and I don't know. I was gonna ask you, uh, maybe a little bit of a as an alum, uh, uh, of DePaul. It feels like that you probably had a pretty good experience at DePaul, especially towards this part of the subject in ABD. Um, and would you have any? What would your advice be for students, maybe doing the undergraduate studies? It doesn't have to be at DePaul, really. Any students sort of going through this idea that, hey, look, I'm taking on a student loan to do this. Um, what would your advice be?
Yeah, and this can apply to DePaul students and beyond. But I definitely think that I was challenged by going to DePaul, but I feel like because I found a community in the African and Black Diaspora Studies department that um, pushed me to that made me stay. That made my experience worth it, and to be able to learn from such incredible faculty, and also being able to imagine and dream and just talk and theorize with other ABD students was really impactful on my time at DePaul. And so I think my general advice would be to find your people, no matter what institution you're at, and find those professors and mentors that will push you to think beyond um, your the boundaries of your comfort zone. Find those uh, other students that push you to think differently and imagine how you can uh, take your own personal experiences a step further and be more and like think on more of a global basis versus just always centering the United States. Um, so I definitely think that ABD has helped to shape and give me the confidence that I needed to graduate and go out and pursue different opportunities that I may not have otherwise came to on my own. So
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm sure that these words will mean a lot to those who might be in similar situations, or those who are teaching a class and have students in that situation. So thank you, Michaela. I think I look forward to touching base with you and seeing what cool stuff you're doing at EJI and beyond. Meanwhile, I will be uh, getting your daily emails. And I'll be thankful every time that I get those emails. And I thank you again for joining us today at Digication Scholars.
Thank you so much. And I'm really happy that we had the opportunity to connect again. I think you're an incredible person and you're doing incredible work as well. So I definitely appreciate you providing this platform and space to speak with me.
Thank you. Take care.
The Digication Scholars Conversation Series is brought to you by Digication, a technology platform powering the most innovative e-portfolio programs in K-12 and higher education. Our website can be found at digication.com. This episode was produced by Drew Albanesius. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please like, subscribe, and share with a friend. Thanks for watching.